Paris Fashion Week is not a space where the sports world typically makes headlines. It is one of the most exclusive and culturally powerful events on the global calendar, where the world's most influential designers, celebrities, models, and industry power brokers gather to set the tone for fashion, culture, and commerce. So when Mike Amiri, the founder and creative director of one of the most sought-after luxury streetwear brands in the world, stepped onto that global stage and publicly announced Shedeur Sanders as the official American face of Amiri, the collision of two worlds happened in a way that nobody in the National Football League saw coming. This was not a quiet brand deal announced through a press release or a subtle Instagram post. This was a declaration made on one of fashion's most powerful platforms, in front of a global audience, signaling that Shedeur Sanders is not simply a quarterback entering the NFL, he is a cultural entity building something that extends far beyond the football field. The NFL fanbase was caught completely off guard. Draft analysts, sports commentators, and football insiders had spent months debating Shedeur's draft position, his mechanics, his ceiling as a professional quarterback, and which team would select him. Nobody was predicting that while those conversations were happening, Shedeur was quietly building a luxury fashion empire with one of the most recognizable names in high-end American streetwear. The reported $80 million deal connected to this partnership instantly reframed every conversation about where Shedeur Sanders stands, not just on the field, but in the broader cultural economy. Culture, sports, and luxury fashion collided in one announcement, and the reverberations are still being felt across both industries. To fully understand the weight of this moment, it is important to understand exactly what Paris Fashion Week represents. Held twice a year, Paris Fashion Week is the most prestigious event in the global fashion calendar. It is the stage where the world's most iconic luxury houses, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Givenchy, present their collections to an audience that includes heads of state, A-list entertainers, billionaire investors, and the most influential media figures in the world. A presence at Paris Fashion Week, especially as a brand ambassador or runway figure, signals elite cultural positioning that most celebrities never achieve. For an NFL quarterback, someone who has not yet played a single regular season game in the league, to be announced as the face of an American luxury brand at Paris Fashion Week is historically unprecedented. Quarterbacks do not walk Paris runways. They appear in shoe commercials, fast food advertisements, and sports drink campaigns. Shedeur Sanders did not follow that path. By stepping onto the global fashion stage before his NFL career officially began, he repositioned the conversation entirely. The symbolism is undeniable, from mock draft debates happening on sports talk shows to being celebrated at one of the most exclusive cultural events on Earth. That is not an accident. That is a calculated, strategic move that reflects a completely different kind of ambition. The reported $80 million Amiri partnership is not a standard celebrity endorsement deal, and it would be a significant misrepresentation to describe it as one. According to reports surrounding this announcement, the deal encompasses American brand ambassador rights, meaning Shedeur Sanders represents Amiri across the United States market as the primary cultural face of the brand. It includes full campaign shoots, the editorial photography and creative content that defines how a luxury brand presents itself to consumers globally. It covers runway appearances in Paris, which places Shedeur physically at the center of the international fashion conversation. And critically, the deal is structured as a long-term positioning arrangement, not a one-season promotional contract. This is the distinction that separates this deal from what most athletes experience when they sign an endorsement. A typical athlete endorsement involves a check in exchange for wearing a logo, posting on social media, and appearing in a commercial. What Shedeur has reportedly secured with Amiri is global luxury brand representation, a role traditionally reserved for the world's most culturally significant figures in entertainment and fashion. The $80 million figure reflects not just payment for services, but the value of cultural alignment. Amiri is purchasing Shedeur's identity, his audience, his authenticity, and his trajectory as a symbol of modern American culture. That is a fundamentally different transaction, and it positions Shedeur in a market that most NFL players never access regardless of how many Super Bowls they win. Mike Amiri did not choose Shedeur Sanders by accident, and understanding why he made this choice reveals something important about where luxury fashion is heading. The Amiri brand has always occupied a unique space. It is luxury fashion with streetwear DNA, priced at a level that appeals to the ultra-wealthy while carrying an aesthetic that resonates with younger, culturally connected consumers. That duality requires a brand ambassador who lives authentically at that intersection, and Shedeur Sanders is exactly that person. Shedeur grew up in a high-profile household as the son of Deion Sanders, one of the most culturally significant athletes in American sports history. He has been in the public eye for years, has cultivated a massive social media following, and has demonstrated a consistent personal style that bridges streetwear culture and luxury aesthetics. Luxury brands in the current market are not simply chasing athletes with the highest performance statistics. They are chasing cultural capital, the ability to influence consumer behavior among younger, affluent demographics who make purchasing decisions based on identity and cultural alignment rather than traditional celebrity status. Shedeur Sanders represents Black excellence, athlete entrepreneurship, and a modern approach to personal branding that connects with the next generation of luxury consumers. Reports indicate that multiple competing brands were in conversations with Shedeur's team before the Amiri deal was finalized. The fact that Mike Amiri moved decisively and publicly at Paris Fashion Week suggests he understood that securing Shedeur was a competitive opportunity that required a statement moment, not a quiet contract signing. Parallel to the Amiri announcement, another reported deal has reshaped how people are analyzing Shedeur Sanders' business approach. According to reports, Gatorade presented Shedeur with an offer in the region of $60 million in traditional endorsement compensation. In most contexts, $60 million from one of the most iconic sports beverage brands in American history would represent a career-defining deal. Shedeur's team reportedly went back to the table with a different structure, a 3% equity stake in place of, or restructured alongside, the cash offer. This distinction matters enormously when analyzed through the lens of long-term financial strategy. A $60 million endorsement payment is a fixed, finite number. It is income. A 3% equity stake in a brand like Gatorade, which operates within PepsiCo's portfolio and generates billions in annual revenue, represents a compounding ownership position that appreciates as the brand grows. Equity pays dividends. Equity increases in value. Equity can be transferred, leveraged, and inherited. The mindset required to turn down or restructure a $60 million cash offer in favor of ownership reflects the thinking of a businessman, not simply an athlete looking to maximize short-term income. Generational wealth is built through ownership positions, not through endorsement checks, and the fact that Shedeur Sanders is reportedly operating with this framework before his first NFL snap is a significant marker of how differently he is approaching his career. Before the Amiri announcement dominated headlines, Shedeur Sanders had already negotiated what reports describe as a pre-NFL contract with Nike valued at $125 million. This figure alone would place him among the highest compensated athletes in Nike's endorsement history at the point of signing. However, the structure of the reported deal goes well beyond the headline number. The contract reportedly includes an activation clause that doubles the total value to $250 million based on performance and commercial milestones, a structure that ties Nike's investment directly to Shedeur's trajectory rather than locking in a flat payment regardless of outcomes. The element of this deal that has generated the most discussion among sports business analysts is the reported 50% jersey royalty clause. Under a standard NFL licensing arrangement, players receive a relatively modest royalty on merchandise bearing their name and number. A 50% royalty on jersey sales would be an extraordinary restructuring of that standard, giving Shedeur a direct financial stake in every unit of merchandise sold bearing his identity. Given that reports have indicated Shedeur Sanders led all rookies in jersey sales before the NFL season began, the revenue implications of a 50% royalty clause are substantial. This is not a standard endorsement structure. This is a partnership-level arrangement that treats Shedeur as a co-stakeholder in his own commercial value rather than simply a paid spokesperson. Throughout the lead-up to the 2025 NFL Draft, Shedeur Sanders faced persistent criticism and speculation about where he would be selected. Draft analysts questioned his potential at the next level, debated his arm strength, and scrutinized every aspect of his collegiate performance at Colorado. He was ultimately selected in the 5th round by the Cleveland Browns, a draft position that, in traditional football analysis, carries significant implications for how a player's career is expected to unfold. What the Paris Fashion Week announcement and the accumulation of reported deals demonstrates is that draft slot and brand ceiling are entirely separate metrics. The draft determines which team holds a player's professional football rights. It does not determine cultural relevance, commercial value, or long-term legacy. Shedeur Sanders has reportedly secured deals totaling hundreds of millions of dollars across fashion, beverage equity, and apparel royalties before starting a single NFL regular season game. The ability to control one's own narrative, to define what you represent beyond the position you play and the round in which you were drafted, is a form of leverage that the sports industry is only beginning to fully understand. Shedeur Sanders appears to be years ahead of that curve. Shedeur Sanders' trajectory does not exist in isolation. It is part of a broader transformation in how athletes engage with commerce, culture, and brand ownership. The introduction of NIL, name, image, and likeness rights at the collegiate level fundamentally changed the timeline on which athletes could begin building commercial portfolios. Young athletes no longer have to wait until they are established professionals to begin monetizing their identity. Shedeur built significant brand partnerships and cultural equity while still competing in college football at Jackson State and the University of Colorado. The rise of social media has also restructured the value equation entirely. An athlete with millions of engaged social media followers commands a level of direct consumer access that traditional advertising channels cannot replicate. Luxury brands have recognized that cultural influence, the ability to shape how young, affluent consumers perceive a product, is worth more than any single performance statistic. Athletes who understand this are building equity portfolios rather than simply collecting endorsement checks. Shedeur Sanders sits at the front of this movement, operating at the intersection of professional sports, luxury fashion, and ownership-minded entrepreneurship in a way that is setting a template for the next generation. The conversation around whether Shedeur Sanders could become the youngest billionaire in NFL history has moved from social media speculation into more serious financial analysis. When the reported figures are examined, $250 million in Nike deal value, an $80 million Amiri partnership, a $60 million Gatorade offer restructured toward equity, and a professional NFL salary on top of all of it, the aggregate is already significant by any measure. What makes the billionaire trajectory analytically plausible rather than simply aspirational is the scalability of ownership positions versus fixed contracts. A contract has a ceiling. An equity stake in a growing brand does not. A royalty structure tied to jersey sales scales with popularity. A luxury fashion partnership that positions Shedeur as a global cultural face opens doors in markets and industries that exist entirely outside of football. If Shedeur Sanders plays a decade in the NFL, maintains his commercial partnerships, and continues to build ownership positions rather than simply collecting endorsement fees, the mathematical path to 10-figure net worth is not a fantasy, it is a trajectory that requires execution but is structurally possible in a way it has never been for athletes of previous generations. The Paris Fashion Week moment, the $80 million Amiri deal, the Gatorade equity restructure, and the $250 million Nike arrangement are not isolated events. They are chapter one of a story about what an athlete can build when they approach their career as a businessman from the very beginning. Shedeur Sanders has not yet played his first regular season NFL game, and he is already operating at a level of commercial and cultural sophistication that most athletes never reach across their entire careers. This is not luck. This is strategy, executed at the highest level, on the biggest stages in the world. Make sure you like this video if you respect athletes who are securing ownership positions rather than just endorsement checks. Subscribe and turn on notifications because every move Shedeur Sanders makes from this point forward has the potential to reshape how the entire sports business landscape operates. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe Shedeur Sanders becomes a billionaire while he is still an active player in the NFL? The numbers are on the table. The trajectory is real. The question now is how far this goes.